in love and somebody, the other person says, this isn't right for me and I want to end it. Now, no matter how they say it, that's what they're saying. This isn't right for me and I need to end it because this is not the right relationship. If you love them, yes, you're going to be sad and upset, but if you love them, you will love them enough to say, I want your happiness over mine, and I will let you go and I'll cry like crazy and I'll hurt like crazy for a while. But I know that this is best for both of us because they don't want to stay with you. So why would you want them to stay with you? Well, and that's really tough, I know. But
and even if you're making someone minimize themselves to stay with you, if that's, what the dynamic is already going on, they've lost their voice. Would you really want someone to be in your life that's not fully open to you? I mean, that really is creating the story of resentment right there. Hi, good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today, Steve and I decided we would tackle some issues around feeling that sense of wanting to embrace letting go in a relationship when you're having a hard time can be a real big challenge. So we thought we'd play with this experience of how we're so invested in staying in something that we know is not really serving us and how to let go in that experience. Let me make sure I've got Steve. There you are. Hello, hello.
Howdy.
You doing good this morning? I'm sorry for hanging up on you earlier.
Yeah, she just hung up on me. We were talking away, and then it's like, poof. Now, could have been I was talking way too long. I wouldn't want to say that's possible. No.
No, not you.
She's like, he never shuts up.
You're so funny. So it was a good weekend, you said. That's good. Spend some time.
Yeah, I had a good weekend. I'm down here in Tampa, the weather was perfect. I mean, it really couldn't have been any better. Went for a small motorcycle ride, then we went to a couple different things. Drove over to St. Pete and drove back. A lot of people go, some things are too far, and I go, we're down here in Apollo Beach, which is about in heavy traffic, about 45, 50 minutes away from downtown Tampa. Okay. And we'll tell people, hey, we'll meet you downtown, and they go, oh, we never go downtown. It's way too far.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, we used to drive to Chicago 3 hours away to spend an evening with some people, and then drive back that same night sometimes. And people here are like, an hour, that's, like we live in between Sarasota and Tampa, basically. And people will go, you drive all the way to Sarasota? I go, it's 30 minutes. So,
not that far.
No, that's right. What's up?
So that's true.
So what'd you do this weekend?
What did I do? I worked all weekend pretty much. My son turned 22 yesterday. Yikes.
No way. Well, you're only 25. How can that be?
I know, I still feel like I'm 20. Yeah, exactly. I think I'm 25. I certainly behave like I still am. I don't know. 46. Maybe we can, divide that in half.
46.
I know. Yeah, I'm
40. You're 46?
No, stop it. That makes it worse than it is.
Hey, I have a Instagram. No, not Instagram. What's the other? Pinterest channel. And it's
sorry, guys.
It's called Owls. So if anybody wants to look up Owls, it's older women living sexy. And I take a lot of the people that I know, because a lot of them are 50, 55, 65 years old and still look fabulous, like you look fabulous. And, I say, hey, getting old doesn't have to be a detriment. So I put their pictures up on this a wonderful Pinterest page. A lot of times I tag them, but I tell them, I certainly ask them before I put it up. But, it's really nice to see beautiful women who are more mature, the Judi Dench type of women who love to be mature and sexy. So anyway, I've got that channel up, Owls, on Pinterest. So
I'll have to go check that out.
Yeah.
Too
funny. And you don't even qualify yet. You're too young.
Oh, am I? That's nice to know.
Yeah. Gotta be 50. Gotta be 50.
Not a wise old owl yet. Oh, what a riot.
So worked all weekend. When you love what you do, though, it's not always that much work. It's not like you're dragging yourself into an office where the boss is standing over you. And that makes a difference, when we talk about what we talk about all the time, which is living a life filled with happiness, joy, and fulfillment. that makes a big difference in terms of how you feel when you have to work. You say have to work. You know, sometimes we get to work. I mean, the wife is out of town, so I mean, I work a lot of times till 8:30 at night,
True.
and I don't even think about it until you look up. And when you look up, you're like, oh wow, you know.
Yeah.
Now, I have some people who say they forget to eat.
He's talking
Never
about
happened.
me.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
He's totally talking about me. He's acting like I don't know. Totally know. Yeah, no, I actually am getting a chance to work with Women Across Borders. I'm doing a speaking event soon, and right here in the Valley. So it's kind of exciting, and I've been working on all my new banner material and content, and so that's been kind of exciting. Yeah.
Theater material?
What's that?
Did you say theater material?
No, banner material, banner content, you know, like getting a big banner for your booth and, you know,
Gotcha.
the flyers, because I'm promoting the YouTube channel. And so it's really kind of a fun experience to get a chance and to actually work, you know, face to face with people and have a chance to share my story on stage. So it's kind of fun.
As a matter of fact, I'll be, I was brought in to MC a leukemia and lymphoma event tomorrow night. So it's going to be a really good event. We're raising money for charity here in the St. Pete area. So yeah, it is nice to get to interact with live people a lot of times. So it'll be great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a very exciting event. So is that something that's done every year, or is that just something that is it an annual?
It's done every year. They got a new leader for it this year, and she's real excited to try and raise a lot more money. And what in the past, she's changing something up. Actually, they used to have like a video, you know, of the people, the survivors, and their stories, and instead she brought in real people this year. So we'll get to introduce the real people with their stories of how they've lived with and or gotten through the leukemia and lymphoma. You know, my sister passed away from a lymphoma, so you know, I relate to this a little bit. And so it's one of those wonderful experiences that you get to share and introduce people throughout the Tampa area who are excelling at life. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, I was curious where your link into that was, where your connection was to that kind of event, because I know that usually that's a draw by passion, you know, like something something you've experienced or you've had yourself. That's really cool. Too fun.
Good.
So today we were going to talk about letting go. You know what rolls through my head is that silly song. Do you know what I'm talking about? From not Frost. What is it? That kids movie. Oh, see, you know what? You're not helping much. You're like, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Go.
What frigid? Yeah, not Frost, not frigid.
Oh, somebody type it in there. Somebody's got it out. Come on.
That reminds me.
Don't leave me hanging.
Yeah, what is it called?
That's playing in my head right
Frozen.
now.
Frozen.
See? What happens when your kids get old? You can't remember anything.
So they had a song in there, Frozen, that was about letting go?
Yeah. Yeah, see, your way. Oh, see, now I feel much better. Thank you for that. You don't even know the song. That makes me feel
I barely know the movie. Yeah, what's that all about?
That's great. I love it. Yeah, no, anyway, so that's playing in my head right now. But we really wanted to talk about, like, when you're in a relationship or the relationship's ending, or maybe there's something a partner's doing that you're having a hard time, like, letting go of that. Maybe it's an associate that you're working with and you're invested in them doing it your way. You know, you get stuck in this belief that they're doing it wrong, or, you know, they should love me because I love them, or, you know, whatever the dialogue is. We get really invested and we create a lot of heat and personal internal pain because of that, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. How I related to this was so many times when I work with clients, it's somebody who's dumping somebody, you know, the relationship's ending, and the one person just won't let go. I was just working with somebody the other day where they kept looking at their Facebook page and they kept looking at the pictures, and you're like, wow, you know. The one thing I always promote is that if you are in love, and I always say love never hurts the other person. If you are truly in love and the other person says, this isn't right for me and I want to end it. Now, no matter how they say it, that's what they're saying. This isn't right for me and I need to end it because this is not the right relationship. If you love them, yes, you're going to be sad and upset, but if you love them, you will love them enough to say, I want your happiness over mine, you know, and I will let you go and I'll cry like crazy and I'll hurt like crazy for a while. but I know that this is best for both of us because they don't want to stay with you. So why would you want them to stay with you?
Well,
And that's really tough, I know. But
and even if you're making someone minimize themselves to stay with you, if that's, what the dynamic is already going on, they've lost their voice. Would you really want someone to be in your life that's not fully open to you? I mean, that really is creating the story of resentment right there. If you're not allowing someone to ebb and flow through their personal growth, a lot of times I think we really make it personal why someone's leaving us. And I think that's the story deep down of why we have a hard time letting go is what did I do wrong, or why is it happening, or just the stories of like defeat start to like overcome, and it's sort of internal self-sabotage, right? And so we
what's wrong? Yeah, what's wrong with
what's wrong
me?
with
Why
me?
can't I?
Yeah, I can't ever have a relationship. I'm not a good boyfriend, I'm not a good girlfriend, whatever, good mother, good father, whatever. It's always this story of lack or this belief that we're not enough. And I feel like when we fall into that trap, we're really missing out on the whole point of the experience, is to learn to love to the depths of love, and to learn what's possible for you, and to learn to be more independent outside of it, to like learn that cohesiveness that that when you work together with someone, that you can still be yourself, and there may be a truth to the fact that you may have lost yourself in the relationship, so you get so invested that you all
Oh, yeah.
you get lost in it. And when somebody else feels that pressure, it's kind of what we call codependent, right? They become dependent on us being there for them, or needing them, or whatever the story is. They get lost in that because they can't find themselves in that there's blurred lines. And that can be a very unhealthy experience, and that's usually why people leave, is they have no voice in the relationship, or they feel uncomfortable, and or maybe they just lost the attraction because there is no polarity. So many reasons why a relationship ends.
Well, that's right. And then I think that's the important part is there's so many reasons. It's like I always say, it's like our cell phone now. There's so many distractions in our life. To try and focus on one thing is really hard. So sometimes you have to put things away. Well, a lot of times when you look at why did somebody fall out of love with us, there's no reason. There's no rhyme or reason to that. As a matter of fact, my wife and I were watching The Bachelorette. When she's out of town, we like to watch something that's recorded. So we got to watch The Bachelor. I think it was The Bachelor last night. And this is the young guy, 26 years old, let's say. And he narrowed it down to 3 women finally. And he's been struggling through, I guess, a couple different seasons of finding real love. Okay. Now, I don't know how you can find real love on the show anyway, but that's not my problem. But he narrowed it down to, that's right. He narrowed it down to 3 women last night. And then out of the blue, he looks at this one and says, I have fallen in love with you. And now he hadn't even talked to the other 2 ladies yet, right?
Wow.
I have fallen in love with you, and I want you to be here at the end of this. And she's like, I'm not ready, right?
Holy cow, to be on a show like that and not be ready for a commitment? That's crazy.
I know.
You
Yeah.
know those priests are doing something. They're brewing.
Well, if you watch the whole thing, which my wife is going to be hooked on this, it was a young girl who's really dependent on family. And when she learned that her dad didn't give full commitment, permission. He didn't want to give this guy permission to marry his daughter because he wasn't sure that it was right, or he wasn't sure his daughter was in love, or he wasn't sure that this guy, but he wasn't sure. So when the Bachelor guy told the blonde girl, by the way, your dad didn't give me his permission, she was like horrified. I mean, she was like, what do you mean he didn't give permission, right? And like he said, well, I don't understand. Your dad didn't give permission, but if you're the one that I choose, which this was earlier in the conversation, if you're the one that I choose, we'll get past that, because then he'll see my commitment to you and he'll say it's okay. But she was so distraught about her dad not giving permission that it really drew her back again, even farther away from where she was before. So she was, I'll call her a mama and daddy's girl, not ready for marriage, obviously. And here's this guy who's been looking and finally says, I want you. But then he jumped the fence and ran away.
Wow.
So
in other words,
here's all I'm
the same energy of non-committal folks. Isn't that fascinating?
Here's the key. He should have, if he was really in love and he understood love, and of course at 25, 26, maybe they never will. But he should have said, if it's not right for you, then it's not right for us. And both of them reacted. Now, she stood her ground. She said, you know, I'm just not feeling it. I don't know if I can ever really, I'm not in love with you. I love you. You're a great person. I'm not in love with you. And based upon that, I can't go forward. And he was like, oh no, right? And so when it was over, he was too confused and, like I said, jumped the fence and walked into the darkness. And that was the last episode I saw. So here's what I'm saying out of that, though, is you have to be the person that loves the other person enough to say, I understand. And he did a pretty good job of that, but then he couldn't cope with it, so he had to run away and hide for a while.
Hijacked it. You know, it is really fascinating. First of all, I want to say something about the word love. I feel like we use it, there's so many levels to love, right? There's in love versus loving and caring for someone. I think we kind of, you know, I think the Spanish have it right. They have two different words for love. You know, it's really interesting to me because there is an extreme codependent behavior when someone starts to feel smothered, and it forces the other person to kind of run for the hills. And like you were saying, in this relationship, she was already enmeshed, and enmeshment means like where you're like literally don't have a sense of yourself. You're living through the other perception of other people. It sounds like she was pretty enmeshed with her parents and their beliefs of what's best for her versus her following her own intuition of what's best for her. It's kind of interesting, right? And then for her to sit there and say she loves him, but maybe she doesn't even understand the full interpretation of loving someone else, is because you do. You put someone else's voice and thoughts in front of yours to hear them, not over yours. Big difference, right? You allow yourself to hear somebody else's wants and needs neutral and separate from your own, so that in that way you're putting their needs in front of you. But acknowledging the fact that they may be different than you doesn't mean you minimize yours. You sit there and say, you know what, I get it. Thanks, I love you, but I think I need to learn the process of letting go and loving anyway. And it's very important for us to understand that skill, because you can love someone from afar and wish them the joy in a good life. Doesn't mean it was because you couldn't provide that for them. Usually means that they weren't in touch with what they want or how to communicate it. So they had to go elsewhere to figure it out because they couldn't receive your love. Right.
And I think it's really important. It is really important for people to, especially if you're feeling that in a relationship now, is to understand that there's two sides. Your side might be madly in love. Their side might be, I'm not sure. Or we were madly in love at one point in time, but something about us or our relationship pushes us apart, and I'm not that place anymore. So no matter how much you want to change yourself, don't change yourself to try and fit into their life. Instead, keep yourself and say, I'm starting to understand me better. I mean, when I wrote my book, that's what somebody asked me the other day. They said, what's your book about? I went, it's called the 20 things you need to know in order to find the love of your life. And they always go, oh, so it's about finding the love of your life. I went, no, it's the 20 things you need to learn. Because most of the time what we need to learn is about us, right?
Right, always, absolutely. Our partner mirrors us. That's the beauty of a relationship, is they kind of help you find your cracks and help you nurture and love you through healing those cracks. And that's the opportunity to support each other and be there for each other and not feel isolated, not to feel so insecure about your flaws. And I think a lot of the times in relationships, we run around trying to fix each other, super gluing those cracks instead of getting a chance to I recognize it. It accentuates the beauty of you. And I love these parts of you. It's a celebration of a journey, not necessarily, oh, we'll just put that on the shelf and we'll look at that for right now. Getting a chance to really accentuate it.
Yeah, and that's when we talk about falling in love, that's one of the things that we need to also understand. What are you falling in love with? Who are you falling in love with? Why are you falling in love? So let's say Tamra and I met last year. So let's say Tamra and I met. We really had a nice evening. We spent a few days together, and then long distance, we stay in touch and we get back together, and I go out and see her all the time. And then I go hiking with her, and she goes out in the Alaskan wilderness, or it's the Arizona wilderness out there, and she hikes over these rocks, and I go, ooh, I want to come because I want to spend time with her. And we go out several times, right? And it's a good time. It's her really good time. It's my, that was nice time. And one of the things that might develop is boy, then she says, well, Steve loves hiking. We're going to go out all the time. And so if we ended up getting together, she'd go, come on, we're going out again today. And I'm like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Right? Because it wasn't all that in a can of beans for me, right? But until we express that and talk about it and share that. So she could still go out and do her thing, and she loves doing it, and she loves doing it by herself. Would she like a partner who does that? Occasionally she might. Sometimes she might want to go, just stay home. I need time to myself.
Right.
But until you talk, openly communicate. So when we talk about how do you end things, that's the same kind of thing when we say, hey, how do you let go of something? Well, in this case, it might be she'd let go of me as her hiking partner because she sees that I don't like it nearly as much as she does. And I might say, hey, once in a while I'll go out with you. And she'd go, that'd be great. And the other time she goes out and has a good time all by herself.
Right.
It's like, we talk about it, but it's when you won't let go of something like, well, you kept doing this with me and now you won't. Why is that?
Oh.
And we have problems. That's right, problems.
And I always hear, oh, they changed. They didn't change. They explored. They tried something new. And they don't know whether that something new is something they want or brings them value, or maybe something that's not in their wheelhouse. Until they experience it, they really don't know. Not only that, but you may hike too fast, you may hike too slow, whatever it is. You may, like it could, just for the hiking experience, but too slow?
There is no too slow, is there? There's like, here's a rock, sit down, relax. Hey, here's another rock, let's sit down and relax.
It is funny. I used to get teased a lot because I used to take clients hiking. They're like, wow, you hike fast. I'm like, sorry, I don't realize it. I do it so often, my stamina is different. And so it is kind of funny that, you take certain things in life for granted. I think that's true about everyone. We get comfortable with what we can do and what we can't do. And then when we mirror with someone, we recognize, ooh, some of these things don't really blend nicely and smoothly together. And so we try to morph or change or modify our behaviors to accommodate a new person coming into your life. It's not necessarily always smooth. What's that?
The perfect example of that, yeah. The perfect example of that is, have you ever gone just walking with somebody? I found myself the other day, my wife loves to walk. Now, if you have a goal for me, like if you say we're going to walk all the way up there and all the way back, we're going to time it, we're going to see how fast we can do it today, and then we're going to see if we can keep getting better. That's my kind of walking, right?
Competitive
She just
walking.
likes to walk. Yeah, she just likes to walk. And so the other day we were out and we found ourselves, I found myself matching her stride.
Yeah.
So I'm usually a little bit longer stride than her, but suddenly we were walking at exactly the same pace. And that's what she's talking about. Yeah. Sometimes we change ourselves to try and fit that place.
Human nature, right? It's survival. We try to, I think of this as like in the wilderness, you look at the lion who's hunting down the, what is it, gazelle? What are the, I think it's gazelles, right?
Gazelle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrible. Anyway, not as worldly as I'd like to pretend to be. I know. It is really interesting. The gazelles will all herd together and try to match, like so you can't see the beginning and the end of them. So when they can, it's a survival thing is what I'm trying to say. When the danger comes into play, we will, modify our behaviors to get safe. And when we are connecting to somebody, I don't know if you've ever studied, how we mirror each other. And part of my studies, we watch how, when you're talking to somebody, you'll actually mirror them back unconsciously. And that is that's a way to help somebody feel safe. It's the way we communicate subconsciously. And so it's really important to understand it's not wrong to modify who you are. I don't even want to say it that way. It's not wrong to find yourself modified by a relationship. It's the resentment and the story you make up about it that turns into self-sabotage. I changed to be with you, or he used to do this and all of a sudden he doesn't anymore. That's the problem. It's the attachment to the consistency of that behavior. We grow, we change, we evolve. And every time, one day I used to eat a lot of candy, and one day I decided not to eat candy anymore. It's just an evolution, I used to have a bakery business. So what's that?
Or and ask yourself this, I used to read Stephen King novels way back when. I don't even like Stephen King novels today. So that you're changing, you're evolving, but you don't realize it on a moment to moment, day to day.
Yeah.
So when your partner over the last 3 months is different than you like them to be, you want them to go back, but they're changing too. And that's part of what you need to understand. And sometimes working together says, hey, let's change together. Let's start reading the same things, or let's start watching the same TV shows. And sometimes you can't do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of the times I think we don't give each other the space or the grace to evolve. You know, we try to, you know, you said you're this person or you're going to be this way, and then we start to evolve into this. Now we're totally off track, by the way, of our topic today, but it is true. And I think that that's why it's hard to let go, is we get very invested in what we believe is versus being open to what really is going on in the relationship.
Yeah.
So if somebody starts to feel resistance and the friction in the relationship, the let go is part of the evolution, part of the process to you getting healthy, to recognizing that love will come into your life when you're open to receive, and when you're shutting down or squishing it or controlling it like a little bird in your hand and trying to hold it in, eventually the bird's going to start pecking and getting crazy and trying to get us to escape. You have to let go. You have to accept that change is happening, and then you allow that beauty to cultivate something deep inside of you and not be filled with resentment and get angry about things. It's very difficult because we want to be.
You know, that's really important. And we need to understand that in our letting go, we have to become aware of what they want, what their needs are. You know, like you say, if you're falling in love, and think about it, when you hear a 25-year-old, 26-year-old say they're devastated about falling out of love or somebody stopped loving them, and you try and comfort them, you say there will always be somebody else. And why do you say that? Is because you've experienced that. You went through 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 love affairs, right? Throughout your life, and you know that there will be another time. And trying to comfort them, of course, they don't hear it. They're like, no, you don't understand how much I'll never love somebody like that. And you go, you know, I appreciate that. And as long as you start to understand that as much as you love that person right now, that there will be another opportunity for you to love somebody else who will love you back as much as you love. Or
maybe somebody steps away long enough to realize the value of what they were offered in the first place and can value on a deeper level. I don't think we should ever be attached to, I'm not saying you should go back to past relationships. I'm not, you know, usually what's in a past relationship will rear its ugly head and you'll repeat the same pattern. But you can also learn to embrace the resistance and learn to celebrate some of the discomfort. So I think it's important to understand that we don't want to control the experiences by saying no, yes, you know, and put a stern line in things, but to allow life to come and go and to learn to let go. I really think of let go as more of holding on to your attachments or not. And in relationships, if you're attached to someone being there because they said they would be, you know, that I get that. But at the same time, can you embrace the fact that evolution happens and things change? And, you know, when someone says they're going to be there and their ethics or their accountability in the relationship is starting to falter or change, you have to hold a sense of yourself and recognize by holding on to that person, you're creating a story of resentment in both of you. And letting go is the best gift to joy for both people. It's not just a loving thing to do. It's self-love as well as loving someone else. And I think it's really essential to recognize that holding on isn't the answer, and building up sadness and resentment over change, it keeps you reliving the pattern of being lost and feeling left or abandoned. It keeps you stuck.
And one of the things you're going to find, I try and tell people all the time, I guess is the best thing to say, is when you're ending a relationship, you might also have to change your lifestyle. So if where you met them, let's say you met them at your favorite pub, and you had 3 friends and they had 3 friends and you all met at the pub all the time, you had a great time, and then it's over and you're devastated. If you keep going to the pub, of course you're going to see that same person all the time, as well as their friends. And so all it does is keep that rolling inside of you. People say, well, why should I have to change? And the answer is you don't have to do anything. I always recommend that you start a different direction in your life if that one is not where you want to go. So go to a new pub, go to a new thing, right? And that's what you have to understand, is that you can't keep putting yourself, it's like going back to their Facebook page. You can't keep going to their Facebook page to see who they're talking to now, because that only hurts you. And that's important that you understand that sometimes you have to give up friends and you have to change friends. It's back to, I always go to the same place, so you're always going to get the same results, right? And what's the definition of crazy? What's the definition of crazy?
Doing it again. Expecting a different result. Yeah, you know, it is funny to me because when you brought that up, the first thing that popped in my head is my first experience really learning this experience solidly. I was I was freshly out of divorce, and I was already doing yoga heavily, but then I started dating someone through the yoga community. Wow, when you get very invested in a yoga, it's like high school. I'm just gonna flat out call it what it is. It becomes very much like high school. All your friends are there, you sweat together, you play together, you just it cracks me up. It became a true world of its own. And then when I broke up with that individual, or when we ended our relationship, I had to change studios. I had to find new people to hang out with. I lost a lot of friends in one swoop. I was like, wow, it's an intense experience.
Was it worth it?
I did, you know what I learned about it for me, and I told you guys we'd be sharing, so here we are. What I learned for me is that I'm not defined by my experiences, but my experiences enhance who I am. So it actually added to my life because I learned how to restart, how to formulate new relationships, and that life didn't end by an ending of a relationship, but it actually cultivated a new sense of myself. So I started, I think if anybody's in here probably remembers this journey with me a little bit, because I started my paddleboard hiking stuff, and we started getting together once a week doing paddleboard yoga and going off and hiking in Sedona and different places. And it was just a rebirth, a level of playfulness that I didn't even know had available to me. But in the melting pot of all that pain, I cultivated something really cool for myself, a new experience to connect with people on a different level. And that's what the gift was for me. It's when I realized, wow, if you really stay in this little cocoon of community of people, you're missing out on so much other stuff. And you really can learn to let go and celebrate the disconnect and give yourself a new opportunity to see something different. Same thing with divorce.
And the question
about divorce too. What's that?
Yeah. Well, the question goes back to, have you ever moved? Anybody who's listening, have you ever moved, right? And sometimes you move because you have to. Sometimes you move because you want to. But what makes you move, right? I mean, I was 60 years in Davenport, Iowa, Moline, Illinois. And, it was always like, I hate winter, I hate winter, I hate winter. Right? Why am I still here type thing? But I never really considered a move. And then there were a few things that happened in my life, and I went, you know what? I don't need this anymore. Yeah. It's time to go. And as scary as it was, I picked up and moved to Atlanta, boom. And it took me like 4 days to go, I'm done here. And that catalyst absolutely changed my life. And that changed everything I was doing.
Wasn't that a recent one? Yeah, that was recent. I remember talking to it.
It was 10 years ago. That was 10 years ago.
What's the move you just made with your wife then? That was recent.
We moved from Sacramento here to Tampa.
Okay.
Right. But the one from, one from my hometown.
Gotcha. Again,
it's like, did I love the winters? I hated the winters. I like the atmosphere. I love the area. I'm always proud to be an Iowa guy with farm and corn and all that stuff. But in all honesty, there was nothing there to hold me. There was nothing there to hold me there. And that's it. It's like, and you don't think about how small a dating pool 300,000 people is.
Right.
But I remember going into a place and saying to someone, hey, I want to introduce myself because I've seen you several times and I would like to be able to maybe take you out for coffee sometime. And she looked over and she just went, wait, your name is? And I went, yep. And she went, and you were married too? I went, how do you know that? And she went, oh, I know your ex-wife. And I went, well, never mind then. Have a great day. But 300,000, that's right, 300,000 people, and you keep seeing the same people who seem to know you. And so it was like, yep, that along with several business things that were changing, of course, in those days. And I went, let's just go try someplace else. And I will never, ever think back to that being a horrible experience. It was a wonderful experience, will always be. And that's why I look at people now and go, changing your life, ending a relationship, moving on from a relationship, or stop holding on can sometimes be equated to, have you ever moved? Sometimes you move and it's a wonderful thing. Sometimes you have to move and then it doesn't turn out right and you have to move again. That's all letting go is letting go of where maybe you met that person, letting go of that behavior that held you together. And those are incredible times to, as Tamra said, to grow, to feel yourself change and know that happiness is right there every day if you will let go of the past. And that's what we're after, happiness, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the number one goal for all of us, contentment and or just, deep joy, finding deep joy, right? Do you have something real quick since we're almost wrapping this up?
I'm looking for my deep joy.
Deep joy. Did you leave it on the ground?
Deep.
Be up there.
Really deep.
Just kidding.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. So what do you do when you're in a situation where you have to let go and you're struggling? I mean, this can be even something dealing with your kids. We have a lot of relationships in our lives. We want something to be different. So when you're in that space, what is something you do for yourself? And I'll share one of my own that help you recognize that you're doing it. What's the first thing you do?
You mean if I've established that I'm holding on to a certain behavior, a certain thing, I always use because my son and I are extremely close. That's happened several times with him and I. He's grown because we're not living together. We don't talk, I mean, like every day, and so he'll grow to a place and I realize I'm holding on to what he used to be.
Right.
And if I hold that, right, we have a problem. He'll argue with me or I'll argue with him or we have some resentment build up. And so I have to learn that the first thing I have to do is realize what the other person is doing and why I'm trying to hold on to it. That's the first thing I do. Why is this a problem for me?
Right. I love that. That's perfect. Yeah, I'm very similar in that way. First of all, I use my first indicator to even recognize, excuse me. The first indicator I use to recognize that I'm even in this space is I'll feel like a sense of emotion that I'm almost feeling like I don't even know where it came from, that like caught off guard emotion where you're like, gosh, it snapped me or it made me angry. And I can recognize, wow, I was attached to something I didn't even realize it's attached to. So sometimes it's knowing that, like you're caught off guard and realize you were even attached. So that's the first step for me is when I realize that I go, wow, okay, so what am I hearing? So I'll stop and actually go, okay, what was I hearing that gave me that sensation inside of me? That realization that there's some disconnect. And that's usually the first place I start to recognize that I'm attached or holding on to something that may not necessarily be a truth or, beneficial to both people. So I start to assess that. And then I go directly into what you just said, recognizing that, okay, I believe this is what I was looking for, what I wanted out of this experience. And I realize they were going a different direction. So where were they going? And then that usually helps me cope and comprehend what the attachment was. It makes it a lot easier to go.
And if you listen to both of us, what we were saying was it really takes a lot of self-awareness, because I'll be honest with you, I was probably in my late 30s before I ever had that first aha moment,
right,
that somebody wasn't experiencing what I'm experiencing. And I had to finally go to myself, why am I so upset about this? Mm-hmm. And then you look at yourself, but it takes a self-awareness.
Yeah.
And if you start being aware all the time of your emotions and your feelings, when I drive, I get upset at the other drivers. And my wife's always like, you don't need to yell at them. I said, but that's my fun, right? And then I realized, well, because and then it bothers her. So I have to modify my behavior because it bothers her. And when she's not in the car, I go crazy. I call people names, hey, Mr. Ford driver, get out of the way type thing, but it's all about, if you know yourself, am I really upset at these drivers? No, I don't care. They can cut in front of me. I'm just mad that they cut me off. It's like, what were you thinking, right?
Yeah.
Lose your mind.
Dangerous.
And then you just go past it, because if you held on to that anger, it becomes road rage. Same thing in your relationship. If you're holding on to something, it becomes a block between you and the person that you care most about.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's important to also really recognize that our beliefs are only our perceptions, the way we perceive things, are only limited by our view on life. So if we are looking through this perspective of what we think is real or true, we're minimizing the potential of expanding and growing and learning about the other perspective. So we have to open ourselves up to seeing it from the other side in order to learn to let go. Because if we think we can only live with the blinders on, always looking this direction, we're missing out on everything else. So we shorten our potential. We live a shallow, short life.
And a lot of times, as we start to wrap this up, a lot of times what you find, and what Tamra and I have found, is if we also broaden ourselves to include our partners or our friends, our relatives, our loved ones, we also broaden their perspective. And a lot of times you'll find you get to do new stuff with them because you're going to experience it together. And that, first of all, letting go, if you let go of the old behavior and start creating new behaviors, a lot of times it really enhances your relationship.
Yeah.
And that's really why we're here every Wednesday, to talk to you about enhancing your life, finding more happiness, and as she said, deep joy and understanding of yourself will create a wonderful, better understanding of whoever you're trying to relate to, right?
And pull in more amazing people. The truth is, I mean, our whole point to life is to connect. So why not pull in happy, healthy, bubbly people versus, you know, people who are wankering us down and making us grumpy. You know, we don't want a lot of Steves in our lives. I'm just kidding, Steve.
Oh, what's that all about? Happy people make me unhappy.
Happy about happy. Yeah. Too funny. Well, I love you and I appreciate you so much. So thank you so much for being here and sharing with me. And as always, if you guys want to find Steve, you can go ahead and email him at steve@stevesapata.com, or find him on Steve Sapata. I always mess up your website. Is it
SteveSapatoSeminars.com is my website.
.com? I don't know why I mess that up every time. I'm sorry about that. And if you want to watch any episodes that we have recorded, I put them all on the Tamra Blankenship YouTube channel. So go ahead and check them out and subscribe to get notified about new ones that are coming up. So every Wednesday we put up a new show. Talk to you guys soon. Sending you love. Bye.